Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Meze Emprean Elite, and these are my honest audiophile impressions. I want to thank Meze Audio for providing the Emprean Elite for review. Do greatly appreciate it. Meze Audio, you rock. Alright, so the Elite. This is the revision of the Emprean. Check out the link down below for my review of the original Emprean. Along with getting the headphones, you're going to get a big old silver case, unlike the black one that came with the original, but it is set up the same on the inside. You're going to get some Alcantara pads and a stock cable. Stock cable's just like the original, and this one's actually shorter, which I didn't really use. Alright, so pads, the velour pads are thicker than the leather pads, and on the original, you'll notice that comparing it to the leather pad, definitely thicker on the original. Also, the Elite is slightly smaller. So they did shrink down the size a little bit. They also changed the weight a little bit on the Elite. And not that the originals were very heavy, but I find that the Elites are actually just a tad more comfortable. The smaller pads don't make them look quite as doofy on your head either. You still have a rather large headphone on your ears, but they kind of stick out a little bit more on the original. Check out the links down below for a link to Meze for all the information regarding the specs and the differences that they made and adjustments that they made. As far as the differences between the Alcantara pad and the leather pad, yes, the Alcantaras are a lot thicker, as you can tell. But also, they do make a difference sonically. And so all sonic impressions are going to be done using the leather pad. The differences that I heard using the leather pad and using the Alcantara pad is Alcantara pad, yes, it is more comfortable, but at the same time, it really warms up the sound. It makes it very thick and lush and very warm sounding, and it really dampens it, and it super softens the just overall presentation, and you kind of lose some of the detail retrieval, and it just doesn't sound quite as revealing as it does with the leather pads. The leather pads do add in a lot of sparkle and energy and just a lot more air and space. All right, so going forward, we're going to do the actual sonic impressions of the Elite, and at the same time, I'm going to add in some impressions of and comparisons to the original. So as we go along, I'm going to throw in what I feel like is the differences between this and the original. And then at the end towards the end of the video, we will do direct comparisons between the Elite and the Hifiman Aria Stealth Edition, and also the Roland Red Zero. All right, so the Elite. Bass-wise, bass is very nice, very well detailed, has good resolution to it, has a lot of space and isolation and separation of instruments. There's a lot of information in there, but it lacks impact. It's a very light, subtle bass. Not saying that there is none there. It just doesn't have the growl and the body weight and density that I'm looking for. It just seems to be very light and soft sounding bass, and just a very pleasurable bass, but also it's just kind of, yeah. Comparing it to the original has a whole lot more body, just a lot more density, a lot more impact and slam, and it's just got a very much a visceral feel to it, and it just feels more authentic and realistic in the bass. The original just does the bass better, in my opinion, when it comes to that. Now, does it have quite the detail retrieval and resolution in the bass as the Elite? No, but it does, in my opinion, have better tone, timbre, and overall just better just feel. Mids. The mids of the Elite are very nice. They're airy, spacious. Again, you have a lot of separation there. It has good tone, nice timbre to it, and very good detail retrieval and resolution. But it is thin sounding, and it just doesn't have the naturalism to it. It just kind of lacks that body and that realism. When you're comparing it to the original has more lushness, warmth to it, has naturalism to it, has more body weight and density. And even though it's not quite as airy and spaced out, it just feels more correct. It just feels more realistic in the treble, or excuse me, in the mids. And it just seems to be more of a lifelike presentation on the original versus the Elite. The Elite just lacks that naturalism that comes along with the original. Going into the treble on the Elite is very well extended and it has a lot of sparkle and energy to it, a lot of airiness to it, and it's just a very open sounding treble. It has a lot of brightness to it without being fatiguing. It does have a touch of aggression to it, and it just seems to be a very airy approach to the presentation of treble, and it seems to be elevated, and it puts across a unnatural tendency in the treble. Whereas with the original has a more control, is not quite as airy, has a more laid back approach to the treble, and is more relaxed. But in my opinion, it does a more natural approach in the treble. You still get that sparkle and that energy when it's called upon, but it's not elevated to open it up. It's not falsely boosted to enhance the experience. The original to me does a better job of a natural treble versus the boosted Elite. Soundstage wise, the Elite is very wide. It has a massive stage width, and it does a good job with depth. It's a very open sounding stage, and it's a very revealing. You can really diagnose the stage. It does a good job with placement and imaging. Everything just kind of moves around, and it's just a very engaging soundstage. But layering it does okay with, but it just doesn't sound realistic. It always has that open tendency. Everything always sounds big. Everything always sounds massive. It always sounds huge. When you know a venue is smaller, this doesn't really reveal that. It just has a tendency to make everything sound large. Whereas on the original has the abilities to kind of dictate and portray what a venue sounds like and it should be. If a venue is small and intimate, like a jazz club, it's going to move it in and you're going to sound intimate and close. If something is large, like a stadium venue, it's going to make it sound large. And it does a better job of portraying the depth and the layering within that presentation. The Elite has a very interesting thing that it does in that it's shaped like a donut with a hole in the middle. And it always seems to funnel like vocalists and some instruments into the middle, and everything else surrounds it. Everything is just kind of in a circular, and the vocalist always is in the middle, and the vocalist is always a little back. Even if a song or a track is known to be with the vocalist forward and in front, they always seem to be a little recessed and a little sucked in and surrounded by everything. It doesn't place things straight across. It always has a tendency to curve it. And it's a cool effect and it sounds really awesome, but it's not natural and it's not correct. And it's odd, and I kind of like it, but I don't. It's kind of weird. Whereas the original had a very accurate stage, and if there was an instance in which it was circular and the vocalist or the soloist was in the donut hole, so to speak, it would portray that. But it didn't portray it on all tracks like the Elite does. Overall, I find that the original tends to be better with tone and timbre as well. The Elite has a thinness to it, a lightness to it. The note weight and density just isn't quite there, and things seem to be a little stretched, and it has a little bit of a metallic timbre to it. Detail retrieval and resolution is way better on the Elite. The Elite definitely is an improvement in that area. If there is one flaw of the original, in my opinion, it would be that it's not the most resolving, and it's not the best detail retrieval of a headphone in the price point, but it is more natural and accurate sounding than the Elite. Comparing it to the Hifiman Aria Stealth. Hifiman Aria Stealth has more bass impact, has a little bit more note weight, a little bit more density to the overall sound, has better controlled treble, and is more defined in its imaging. It has a better way of portraying things. It doesn't always suck things into the middle and surround it, but it does have that stretched out soundstage like the Elite, very wide, open, and spacious. But I find that the Aria Stealth is more controlled in that and does a better job of defining it. It doesn't sound as stretched and unrealistic like the Elite. Tone and timbre on the Aria tends to be a little bit on the more metallic side, just like the Elite, but I find that the Elite is more offensive. The Roland Red Zero. I find that the Roland Red Zero has way better tone and timbre, and is, even though it has a smaller stage, it does better with depth and layering, and is more precise in its imaging and more accurate and true, and it sounds more natural. The Roland Red Zero, in my opinion, also does a better job with being more defined in the bass and in the treble, and definitely in the mids. I find that the Roland Red Zero is a more pleasing sound signature than the Elite. Overall, I find that the Elite is a pleasing and pleasant and unique sound signature, and has some very interesting changes that were done versus the original. But I find that the original, being $1,000 cheaper, actually is more fun sounding and more natural and realistic sounding, and I just don't find the Elite to be worthy of $1,000 price point difference for the changes. Yes, there is a better detail retrieval and resolution, but the compromises that were made in the other areas when it comes to soundstage width, depth, layering, imaging, tone, and timbre just don't make up for the $1,000 difference. This has been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription link, notification bell. If you haven't already, please check those off. And then don't forget to check out all the links down below for information regarding how you can contact the channel, support the channel, follow the channel. And there's gear lists, tier lists, and all kinds of other things down there. This has been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Don't forget to enjoy the music, and honesty is the best policy.